Brenda Sparks, the woman the entire young Sheldon fandom cast as the villain, the homewrecker, the other woman who broke up the Cooper family. We all knew how it would end. All the way back in The Big Bang Theory, adult Sheldon told us his father had cheated with another woman. So when, at the end of season 4, George storms off to a bar after a fight with Mary, and the recently single neighbor from across the street slides in next to him and offers some company, and the camera reveals it's Brenda, everyone's brain filled in the rest. There she is. That's the one. It all adds up. And now the truth. It wasn't her at all. The affair little Sheldon once witnessed and carried with him his whole life turned out to be nothing like what it seemed. And Brenda, the one we all quietly judged, is a divorced single mom whose own marriage quietly fell apart, whose son the whole town snickers at, and who got cast as the bad guy in someone else's story, while her own very sad story played out somewhere in the background, in a place nobody was looking. What the writers actually pulled off was a clever trick. They hid an entire drama inside a sitcom and laid laughter on top of it. And while we were all howling at the chicken chasing Sheldon around the yard and the grumpy lady across the street, sitting right under our noses was maybe the loneliest adult in all of Medford. I didn't see it for a long time either. I just saw a joke. Hey, take a seat on Cooper's couch, so let me lay it all out in order. Why Brenda Sparks might be the loneliest person in the whole show, and why the series worked so hard to make sure you never noticed. Quick question. Try to remember the big episode where the Sparks marriage blew up. The scandal. Plates against the wall. The dramatic talk in the rain. There isn't one. That episode simply doesn't exist. Herschel doesn't leave the show with a slammed door, he fades out. The last time we really see him is in season 2. After that, he just shows up on screen less and less. And then, in season 4, Brenda's at the door telling Mary, "It's not just about Billy, Herschel moved out. That's it. No, we're getting divorced scene." The show doesn't even explain why. A marriage that had been there since the very first episodes dissolves somewhere between the jokes, and the show never stops to mark it with even a moment of silence. And at first that drove me crazy. How does such a huge event in a character's life get shown to us out of the corner of our eye? And then it hit me. That was the point. Because that's exactly how real marriages die. They fade. At some point there's just one fewer person in the house, and the other one is left with the kids, the bills, and an empty half of the closet. A little later, Mary and Meemaw drag Brenda out for a girls' night to cheer her up. And there, after a couple of drinks, Brenda says the saddest thing in the whole series. They ask her if there was another woman, and she says, no. Though sometimes I wish there had been, then at least I'd have someone to be angry at besides myself. And then, in 3 short beats, she describes how her marriage died. We used to be happy. Then, little by little, we stopped. First there were arguments, then silence, and then it was over. I mean, that's not a sitcom line at all. That's a real person describing the worst thing that ever happened to her, and the show lets her say it once and rolls right on. Living the dream, she adds, about the extra shifts in the single mom life, and that's so very Brenda. The bitterness is the joke, and the joke is the wound, and the town doesn't help her. This is Texas, the 90s, a small place where half of life revolves around church and the other half around gossip. A divorced woman there instantly becomes a topic of conversation. Whispers at the store, looks from the church-going women in Mary's circle, the endless "did you hear about the Sparkses?" Brenda goes through all of it publicly, in plain view, in the house across from the most devout family in town. And she goes through it without once asking anyone for pity. And here's the most interesting part of the thing almost everyone gets wrong. The writers knew perfectly well we'd believe in the affair, and they fed us that expectation for 2 whole seasons. Secret meetings in the chicken coop, George fixing Brenda's car, playing handyman around her house, the bar, the beer, that shared Lynyrd Skynyrd concert in Dallas back in '76 that it turns out they were both at. Every one of those scenes quietly whispered, "Here it comes. It's about to happen." And now here's what actually happened in that bar. Brenda makes the first move. She's the one who basically says, "Let's get out of here. There's nobody at my place." And right at that moment before George can even respond, he clutches his chest. Heart attack. The whole scene gets cut off by the ambulance. We literally never hear what George was going to say. We're not shown his answer at all. And then the show does something that honestly strikes me as a pretty clever move. It just doesn't let it happen. Newly divorced Brenda decides to look for someone else. She and George agree not to be seen together in public. And then, closer to the very end, in season 7, the show drops the real bomb. That affair the very one little Sheldon once stumbled onto and remembered for life wasn't Brenda at all. It was Mary, in a blonde wig with a German accent playing a character named Helga, doing a roleplay game with her own husband. The woman Sheldon caught with his father was his own mom. For several seasons, the fandom held Brenda as the villain of the story, the home wrecker, and it turned out she hadn't destroyed anything at all. The affair we all remembered was George and Mary, lawfully wedded husband and wife, getting weird together. Honestly, after I realized all this, we owe an apology to Brenda Sparks, folks. We all do. For years, we side-eyed a lonely divorcee and blamed her for something she didn't do. She was just a person who was lonely and got drawn to the one guy willing to actually talk to her like a human being, and even that, as it turned out, was mostly just talk. But the loneliest thing about Brenda isn't the husband, and it isn't that almost something with George. It's her kid. Billy Sparks is maybe the kindest character in the whole series. He wishes nobody harm. He'll bring you eggs from his chickens just because you're a neighbor. But let's be honest about how Medford sees him. The odd kid who barely scrapes through school and talks to birds. To us, the viewers, he's sweet. Now put yourself in his mother's shoes. Every day, Brenda watches the world flick her son on the nose. Classmates, teachers, the neighborhood's genius kids, and there's nothing she can do about it. You can protect a child from a bully. You can't protect him from simply not being what everyone wants him to be. But Billy's happy, truly. He lives in his own world with his chickens, he's good there, and he doesn't even notice the town looking down on him. And that, to me, is the most terrifying thing for a mother. Not when your child is suffering and understands everything, but when he's smiling, completely unaware, and you're the only one standing next to him, seeing all of it. Brenda carries that knowledge for both of them. And compare that to the house across the street. Mary got a genius, a child to show off, and she spends half the series talking about how hard he is to handle. Brenda got Billy and tried to remember a single scene where she whines about it. I couldn't. What I do remember is her defending him. When the neighbors come around looking for a fight and someone calls Billy weird, it actually escalates into a real brawl one time Meemaw comes back with a black eye, and Brenda's got a chunk of hair torn out. For her son, she's literally ready to throw hands. And when the most popular cheerleader at school suddenly asks Billy out, Brenda smells a rat from a mile away. And here's the moment fans understand backwards. She doesn't sit Billy down for a heart-to-heart, she goes to Missy. Missy pulls out the yearbook and confirms it. The girl's too popular, she's definitely pranking Billy. Everyone assumes Brenda is some kind of cool adult friend Missy pours her heart out to. Nope, it's the other way around. It's Missy feeding Brenda intel about her own son. And later, when Brenda goes away for the weekend and Missy throws a party at Billy's place because of it, Brenda sees right through her over the phone in 2 seconds. By the way, the coach once says it out loud. Billy is lonely because his dad left. So you've got in one half-empty house a lonely son and a lonely mother, and the show plays it all as chicken jokes. And the person closest to Brenda, the one who truly understands her, is the last one you'd ever name. It's Mary. Brenda and Mary start out as outright enemies. In season 1, they're screaming at each other at the bowling alley. There's literally an episode where a fight over a dog ends in that very brawl. They needle each other, compete, roll their eyes. Classic neighbors who can't stand each other. But watch what happens when one of them is really hurting. In season 3, Brenda catches Mary smoking in the garden. Ribs her at first, and then sees that Mary is genuinely crushed, and instead of kicking her while she's down, she says, "Come here, take a cigarette. Let's go to the coop where God can't see us." That's where the real friendship begins. Two mothers admitting the same secret. It's brutally hard to raise a child the world thinks is weird. And here's the irony that makes me a little uneasy. The closest thing to a best friend in Brenda's life is Mary, the wife of the very man Brenda was drawn to. They needle each other right to the end, But when things get rough, they end up at each other's side again and again on the porch, in the kitchen, at that same bar. Because in all of Medford, there are no two other women who understand each other's lives so well. Both are holding a household together. Both live in the shadow of their own children. And when it all comes out, when Mary finds out about George, they first tear each other to pieces and then finally talk for real. And Brenda delivers the line that's essentially the key to her whole arc. I'm not his wife, I'm just easier to talk to. All there ever was talk. And Mary fires back with the cruelest and most honest line. You couldn't hold on to your own worthless husband, so you went after mine. And after that, they make up. Because they need each other more than they need to be right. Next, the bowling alley. The bowling alley in this show is a seriously underrated location. For everyone else, it's a place you come to unwind. For Brenda, it's a way out. At the start, she's a housewife husband, kids, home. The husband drops out of the equation and she comes to work not just to work but to find some peace. Just to get out of 4 empty walls. And little by little, that's exactly where she puts herself back together. Her own money, her own crowd, she's got friends there, she's got Meemaw stopping by for a margarita. A woman life stripped down to nothing quietly, without any announcements, put herself back together pouring drinks while everyone else was just rolling balls. And the show doesn't turn it into a poster. Nobody steps into the center of the frame to give a speech about a strong, independent woman. Brenda just stands at her spot every episode, pours, jokes, counts the till, puts pushy customers in their place. Her loneliness hasn't gone anywhere. She still goes home to an empty house. But it changed shape. It was a hole. Now it's solid ground under her feet. And then an ending nobody sees coming. George dies. Heart attack. Off screen. Right at work. And at the funeral, you brace yourself for Brenda to be the most devastated person in the room, right? Instead, she's standing in line next to Sheldon's old science teacher, making small talk about nothing, and offhandedly drops, "I'm free." And he answers, "Me too." And that's it. A lonely lady at the funeral of the man the whole fandom paired her with, quietly leaves the door cracked open to something new. And I love that the show refuses to finish her off, because here's the honest version of Brenda, with all the jokes stripped away. A woman who lost her marriage, raised a son alone that the whole town laughed at, got branded for an affair she never had, reached for the one person she couldn't hold on to, and after all of that, didn't fall apart. She has Meemaw. She made up with Mary. She built a life behind that bar. Yes, she's lonely. Maybe lonelier than any adult in Medford. But the show's quietest trick is that it never once let her loneliness turn into anger she'd dump on someone else. If you throw out all the details and keep the essence, then living right across the street from the Coopers this whole time was this. A woman who lost her husband with no drama, raised a child the town had already written off, ended up the villain in an affair story that was actually about other people, found warmth in a man she couldn't keep for herself, and rebuilt herself from nothing. And the show told us all of it in a whisper, between chicken jokes. Not one episode labeled sad moment, not one tearful scene set to music. All of it hidden in the background, in the pauses, in a sharp little joke that was actually a wound. And now her jab at Mary reads completely differently. Young Sheldon is built that way all over. Comedy on top, real life underneath, and the funnier a character looks at first glance, the more painful their story is once you look closer. Brenda Sparks is the clearest proof of that. Loud, sharp-tongued, always with a joke ready, and yet maybe the loneliest person in Medford. One who never once turned her loneliness into a weapon. And there's a whole truckload more of these hidden stories in this little town. So if watching a familiar show from this angle did it for you too, stay on this couch. We're keeping going. Thanks for watching. I love you, your Cooper's couch.